Come on, 2, 3.
Well, good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN Weekly for Saturday, May 21st, 2021. It was another great week of shows with great topics and great guests. We kicked off the week with a look at how to beat traffic congestion and find that parking space. Let's take a look.
Cities are getting more crowded by the week and the month. I think maybe we had a little reprieve during COVID where people were working from home. But if you live in Charlotte, I live in Atlanta, cities are back and traffic is back. And it's a challenge when you're living in these cities. And so the people who run the cities, the transportation professionals, it's really important to them that cities are livable. And cities aren't just in total gridlock all the time. And so we have a solution that we believe helps cities, one, help people park a lot smarter, but also show them where the open parking spots are around them. So we have a feature in the Park Mobile app called Parking Availability, and that really shows you open spots in your area. So you don't have to drive into areas where there's never any spots. You drive to areas where there's open spots, or you can reserve a spot in a garage ahead of time. And so instead of driving aimlessly into town, you just book your spot ahead and then drive directly to the garage and park your car. So within the parking industry and the parking mobility industry, there are hundreds of technologies out there, software, hardware, gates. And part of being in this industry is that you have to integrate to all of them. So Park Mobile has over 100 integrations to really every parking technology out there. And so when we go into work with a city or we go to work with a parking operator, they tell us what they have in their technology stack. And almost 100% of the time, we can integrate with their tools. So if you have maybe a pay station or a parking meter, we can integrate with that technology. If you have gates in your garage, we can integrate with your gates. So rather than putting a ticket into a machine, if you take a ticket, you can scan it with the Park Mobile app and make your payment, and then the gate will lift. And so, you do have to integrate with tons of different technologies, but we've been around now since 2008. So we've really kind of evolved as the parking industry has evolved. And so we integrate with everything. And that makes it really easy for cities or operators to work with us, because whatever technology they have, we can work within that technology. So what's really exciting from a city perspective is that, you rewind 10, 20 years ago, and cities were flying blind when it came to parking and traffic and things like that. It was really hard for them to kind of get their arms around it. Now with solutions like what Park Mobile has, we can provide a city with real-time data on who's parking where and when, for any time of day and any day of the week. So as a city operator, that there are certain parts of the city that there's never parking available. And then there's certain parts of the city where there's always parking available. But what happens in a lot of cities is that the parking rates for the high demand areas and the parking rates for the low demand areas are exactly the same.
Yep.
So a smart city is starting to look at this data and saying, hey, you can never find a parking spot in this part of the city. Maybe we should increase the price here to get cars turning more often, and change the policy. So instead of letting cars sit there for 4 hours, let's only let them sit for 1 or 2 hours. But then in other areas where there's less demand, you have to look at that policy, say maybe we lower the price here, or we keep it the same and extend the hours. And so cities can make much more interesting and informed decisions on what their parking policies are. And that's going to help make the cities a lot more livable going forward into the future. So that's really exciting. The other thing I think is really interesting, cities in the past have had to make major capital expense in things like parking hardware on the street. So you still go to cities and you see every parking spot, there's a meter and it takes coin, and those are expensive. And then you have to manage them and you have to repair them over time. In a lot of the cities that we work with, you're now seeing upwards of 70 to 75% of the parking transactions are going through a mobile app now. And what's great about that is now cities can say, hey, we can reduce our capital expense on all this hardware, and we can open up the sidewalks more. So you can take some of these maybe unattractive looking old parking meters off the street if everyone's going to use the app. So cities really like that. We call it going asset light. So you don't have to spend a ton of taxpayer dollars on all of this hardware going forward. You just buy a couple kiosks, and then you know that most people are going to pay via the app.
We also discussed keeping safe while on the water this summer. Let's take a look.
Well, in all 56 states and territories, there's a thing called carriage requirements. It starts at the federal level, but then the states have also adopted laws. They vary a little bit from state to state, so it's important for everyone to check with their state regulations. But the carriage requirements basically require that there be a life jacket on board for every person on your vessel during that outing, and that the life jacket fit properly. So, you can have, say, 6 life jackets underneath the seat, and you might bring some kids on board that day. If those are not child-sized life jackets, you could find yourself in trouble with the authorities should you get pulled over. We like to say, though, it's important that everybody wears a life jacket at all times. The carriage requirements don't quite go that far, but in the event that there's an accident, it's impossible to put a life jacket on during or before that accident occurs. So instead of finding yourself suddenly thrust in the water and then trying to pull a life jacket out of a sinking boat or whatever, it's just a good idea to find a comfortable, good fitting life jacket and wear it all the time. Well, not in the true sense of buckling up like a seat belt, but coincidentally, we put together now 2 or 3 versions of a video PSA for the Coast Guard and for recreational boating safety, where we compare life jacket wear to seatbelt wear. And seatbelt wear in America is ubiquitous. People get in a car, and for the most part, most Americans snap the seatbelt as soon as they get in. But what we don't find is true is that in a boat, people don't necessarily jump in a boat with a life jacket on or put one on once they get in the boat. So we did some videos, some very cleverly designed videos where folks were not wearing seatbelts or not wearing life jackets, and we compared the accident situations that might occur. In fact, in the auto situation, a truck runs a stop sign, and there's going to be a collision, and the person in the front seat that we saw earlier did not put the seatbelt in, reaches for the seatbelt and tries to click the seatbelt in a split second before an accident occurs. And obviously we all know that won't happen. Then we draw the same comparison in a boat where all of a sudden a boater realizes that there's about to be a collision of 2 boats on the lake, and the passenger starts scrambling underneath the seats looking for the life jackets. And, again, it's just impossible to get that done that quickly. So, we draw that same comparison. We think it's a great comparison. People do wear wear seatbelts in their cars, but we've done the Coast Guard's done studies. Only about 6 to 7% of American boaters wear their life jackets at all times, and it's the number one cause of death in boating is drowning. 86% of those involved in an accident were not wearing a life jacket. So if we can just get life jacket wear improvements, we think we can save a lot of lives. Well, the new technology. Sorry, I walked on you there. The new technology in the lightweight inflatable life jackets, they look like suspender style. They just sort of slip over your neck, and there's these 2 sort of cylinder tubes here. They strap around behind your back. Auto inflate. If you fall in the water, they just automatically pop open, and you've got this thing you slip over your head. Some are made as sort of a fanny pack, like a belt pack. And same thing. You go in the water, they auto inflate. These auto inflate life jackets are really the way to go. They're lightweight, they're comfortable. You can't use them for children, but you can use them for adults. But we've also done the same thing we did with life jackets with the alcohol situation compared to cars. And one of our producers said one day, he goes, he had some younger folks in the room, and he said, would you get in a car with someone at the steering wheel of a car that could reach within arm's distance a cooler full of beer or some other kind of alcoholic beverage and was planning to drink those while driving? And everyone in the room said, no, absolutely not. So this whole norm about not drinking and driving has really gotten better over the years with on the roads. But in a boat, for some reason, it's just part of the boating experience. You throw a cooler full of beer on your boat or whatever, and it becomes what you do. And so we've been doing our best to try to bring this subject to the forefront. The number one leading contributing factor to boating accidents involving a death is the use of alcohol. So if boaters would just simply designate someone to stay sober, or maybe avoid the alcohol altogether, save it for when you get everyone back safely to the dock, we know that we can save a lot of lives. There are rules on the water, just like they are on a road. There are law enforcement agencies that patrol the water, just like they do on the road. It depends on the body of water. For national waters, it's the Coast Guard, and maybe in a parks situation, it could be National Park Service. The Army Corps of Engineer has a number of lakes that they manage. But usually it's their state agency. And here in Florida, it's Florida Fish and Wildlife. And what's really interesting is I just attended a seminar last week, a Life Jacket Association seminar, where some folks from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission came in and made a presentation. And the thing they told us was as many as 85 to 95% of the stops that they make, they do not write a citation. So you might be in violation, like say you're in a no-wake zone and you're making a wake. Or maybe the officer, sees someone sitting on a gunnel and says, wait a minute, I want to make sure they're got life jackets, whatever. They may pull you over. As much as 85 to 90% of the time, no citations are issued. And what they explained was they find these as boater education instances, and they spend those moments educating boaters, how to be a safer boater. I thought that was really interesting because, usually think of the long arm of the law as the hammer that's going to come down and say, you did something wrong and we're going to punish you. And here's your citation for $250 or whatever it might be. Now, they did explain that, if you're BUI over the limit, that you're probably going to get arrested for BUI, boating under the influence. The other one was if they'd written you a warning in the past, and in the state of Florida, they have a warning system, just like a ticket system, where they'll put the warning into the system. And if another officer pulls over that same boater and sees that there was a warning given, a week or 2 weeks earlier, and the boater is still doing the same thing, well, they're going to get a citation at that point then too. So, but yeah, you're absolutely right. It's just like on our roadways. They're there to help enforce the rules and the laws and make sure that everyone has a good, safe time on the water.
Well, we're halfway through our best segments. When we come back, the other half, you're going to want to stay tuned right here. BRN Weekly.
But if you're tired of the same.
Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Are you stuck with a low credit score? A credit report and score that's causing you to be denied credit or pay higher interest rates than others for the same things? Then do what Terrence did and call Credit Repaired for your free credit evaluation to help restore your credit.
I started thinking about buying a new house, and my score wasn't where I needed it to be. I called and spoke with one of the representatives, and we just had a good conversation, and I liked what he was saying.
Just one call for his free credit evaluation was all it took to start back on the track to repairing his credit.
I'm seeing the deletions and I'm getting the report, so I know something's being done. It does make a difference to me.
All it takes is one call to get started.
Credit Repair has given me a second chance to have a better credit score.
Don't let a low credit score hold you back another day. Do what Terrence did and make the call for your free credit evaluation.
Call 800-819-4152. That's 800-819-4152. Again, 800-819-4152.
Welcome back and thanks for sticking around. We also discussed learning to ride equestrian at any age. Let's take a look.
So obviously it dates back to the early 1900s, and it's gone, and it's been kind of a long, interesting period. You know, there's obviously different disciplines. You know, we focus a lot on hunter jumper, but there's, you know, in the early days, there's a lot of fox hunting. There's been eventing, dressage. There's obviously quarter horses and things like that. So the disciplines go quite a ways back. But, you know, in the early days, it was all done in the hunt field, you know, natural, you know, riding in the big field and out in the grass, and natural obstacles when you're talking in the sport of, you know, the jumping. And that's also where fox hunting came in and kind of led us into the hunters in the discipline of hunter jumper and things like that, dating into the early days. Very natural things you'd see out in the field, you know, wood walls, trees, things like that were made into the fences that horses jumped. So it started kind of, again, back in the 1900s as an Olympic sport, and before that as well. And it's grown into what you see today, into a more refined version. If you look back at pictures from the early days, you'll see the old hunt coats and things like that, and how the apparel has sort of transformed today into new apparel and new things. And, you know, we're jumping now things that fall, and there's obviously still fox hunting and things that take place out in the woods, but the sport has really come a long way since the early days and when it started. You know, the riders, you know, connect with the horse on many different levels, and the horse needs to connect with the rider. And then obviously you have professionals that ride every horse and have to be very versatile and don't get to be as choosy as a normal rider. You know, when you're the customer, you're a one owner and you're looking for your horse, you get to kind of pick and take the time to find what works for you and how you click. And as a professional, you have to be versatile and riding everything. And, you know, I think there has to be a lot of natural talent there, you know, on behalf of the rider. And like you said, endurance and fitness and the communication between the horse and the animal. And, you know, you don't get to be as picky when you're the professional. When you're the one buying the horse for yourself, you know, you get to take the time to find the animal that you click with on different levels, on when you ride and on the ground and things like that. So makes it very interesting. There are places around the country, if you want to go and just do trail riding, I'm sure you've seen it. You know, you can go visit resorts around the country, and oftentimes they have trail riding on the beach and things like that. There are still places that exist where you can go out west, and different farms where you can just go if you want to rent a horse and go on like a guided trail ride. There are facilities that if you want to just learn basic riding and you want to take lessons, you know, it's available for anything. My family has a farm in Michigan, for instance. You know, we start kids and families that want to maybe just learn the basics. Maybe they have no interest in competition, but they want to just kind of get involved in it as a little bit as a sport or for pleasure and get to be around the animal and things, so they can come take riding lessons, learn how to interact with the horse, learn how to tack up a horse, and just enjoy it. And then again, other places that you can go and just pop in and do a trail ride for the day. You don't really have to know anything. You kind of just go sign a waiver and you can go out on a nice trail ride and enjoy it. So, you know, there's a possibility for anybody to be involved in the sport on any level, just depending on on how you want to do it. If it's just for the leisure moment for one day, or if you want to learn just the basics and learn how to get into it, there's plenty of opportunities around the country. There's farms everywhere that'll teach you, hunter jumper English style. If you want to learn Western, if you want to learn any of that, you can go and just see it on any level and take it as far as you want to. So it can be anything. There's obviously, a big breeding process. So it depends on what you want. There's thoroughbred. Sometimes you have retired race horses, yes, or somebody has bred a racehorse that doesn't work out, in the racing industry. The horse doesn't run well, it doesn't perform, it doesn't like that lifestyle. So they might convert it. They might take a thoroughbred and turn it into a hunter jumper or a dressage horse. Quarter horse is a very specific thing depending on what you're looking for. It needs to be bred to be a quarter horse. There is quarter horse racing that goes along with that as well. And some people breed for pleasure. They find nice horses either in Europe or in the States, and they follow bloodlines back to sires and dams, and they pick, based on the performance of that animal. And they try to take animals that perform very well and put good bloodlines together, the same in quarter horse, and to try to develop a horse that might jump well, a horse that might race well, a horse, that might perform in the quarter horse world well, in those types of events and classes. And so sometimes, yes, it's a horse that has had another job and now they're put into this new job because either they're done in that career and they need to do something different, or simply that you've gone out and you've picked the bloodlines or somebody else has bred horses. In the hunter jumper industry, we do a lot of shopping overseas. So a lot of horses come, we're buying warm blood horses, whether it's a Dutch warm blood or Swedish or, French bloodlines. We're buying a lot of horses and importing them to the US, and they're either being started over there or they come here as yearlings. They go through sales, or they're just purchased over there off a private farm. They're being bred, what world they go into, one necessarily never knows. Obviously, in the thoroughbred industry, you're going to find a thoroughbred breeder to find a thoroughbred racehorse. Same with quarter horses. The hunter jumper and dressage discipline, they're looking at everything, whether it's a thoroughbred, quarter horses, paints, anything you want to find to turn it into. Maybe it becomes a hunter jumper, maybe it becomes a dressage horse, maybe it gets used in eventing, so you're really looking everywhere to find those horses.
Lastly, we discussed trimming childhood obesity with new and improved supermarkets. Let's take a look.
It's a important and big problem, of course, in New York City specifically, especially in the population that we're looking at. This is public school students. The percentage of obesity is close to between 24 to 25%. So that's a quarter of children. I should say children and adolescents. So a lot of the research that we did focuses mostly on K through 12, and that is higher than the rest of the city if you're comparing it to the rest of the non-public school students. And public school students in New York City are more predominantly students of color specifically. So it's a higher percentage among that population specifically. I don't think it's lack of nutrition knowledge. I think it's a lack of access to affordable, healthy foods. So it's a combination of those things. And I think we'll get into this potentially in some subsequent questions, but there are different problems and there's different solutions to address those problems. And so I think the major problems would be food affordability, like I said, and then there's food availability. So people not being able to access fresh produce, for example, it not being sold in supermarkets in their area or in corner stores in their area. So maybe not access to food stores specifically, but not a lack of access to specific types of foods in those stores, and those stores being affordable. And I think I would be remiss without saying that I think the major problem now is really high levels of food insecurity, so that people are seeking out cheap, expensive foods that are usually nutrient dense and energy poor. Energy dense, but nutrient poor. Yeah, so we're speaking more generally, and I just want to also make sure that the audience knows that the study we did, the data is from, 5 or so years ago, but we still think these issues are important, and if not more important now because of the issues you're highlighting. And
absolutely.
I think the thing that's increased the most during COVID specifically is food insecurity. So people are just are less able, especially including in New York City, less able to afford those healthy foods and relying more on food pantries and other donation-based systems, which is a shame. The simple answer is that it's going to take a multifaceted, multi-pronged approach. So I might be getting a little ahead of myself here, but the study that we conducted about making supermarkets more available and also renovating supermarkets, those are, I think, important steps, but it has to be several different things together. And I know New York City in particular has been at the forefront of a lot of these solutions. So I can name a few of them briefly, but they're things that address the problems I highlighted earlier, which is food affordability and food access. So there's things like Get the Good Stuff program, which is making fruits and vegetables more affordable by giving incentives to people who receive SNAP benefits. There's other types of interventions like that we could propose, like soda taxes, which is sometimes an unpopular opinion, and other things like warning labels for unhealthy foods, so foods with a lot of high levels of added sugars, for example. So I think a lot of those things together in tandem would make a meaningful impact. A lot of things would have to change, of course, and that's probably not very realistic, although idealistic. And I think to more directly answer your question, if we look at the study I conducted, we saw a reduction in about 1 percentage points from, let's say, if I remember correctly, approximately from 25% to 24% in the areas where students lived closer to those subsidized supermarkets. So if you think that, and this is probably a less robust solution than some of the other things that I mentioned, like the Get the Good Stuff program, for example. So I think all those things together could get us down quite a few percentage points, but that's me speculating. A big area missing from the research is looking at these policies in combination, and that's something that I hope to do more in the future.
Well, certainly great segments. I want to thank all of our great guests this week. And that wraps up this episode of BRN Weekly. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest curated news and lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more, all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archives or check out our latest content? Well, visit our website and, of course, our streaming partners. We're back again tomorrow for BRN Sunday. I'll be joined by members of the media, academia, and financial services as we analyze all the news and events for the week. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Waiting here for you to take and drink of. But if you're tired,
Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the first lifestyle and wellness network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.
Are you being audited and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a tax doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.